Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Namo Vishnudaya Krishna Vishnu Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, Chapter 23, Devahuti's Lamentation, text number 40. Vaishrambake Surasane Nandane Pushpa Bhadrake Manase Chaitraratye Cha Sare me Ramayarata Vaishrambake Surasane Nandane Pushpa Bhadrake Manase Chaitraratye Cha Sare me Ramayarata Vaishrambake Surasane Nandane Pushpa Bhadrake Manase Chaitra Ratye Cha Sare me Ramayarata. Vaishrambake Surasane Nandane Pushpa Bhadrake Manase Chaitra Ratye Cha Ramayayata. Vaishrambake Surasane Nandane Pushpa Bhadrake Mataji. Vaishrambake, in the Vaishrambaka garden. Surasane, in Surasana. Nandane, in Nandana. Pushpabhadrake, in Pushpabhadraka. Manase, by the Manasa Sarovara lake. Chaitraratye, in Chaityaratya. Cha, and Saha, he. Reme, enjoyed. Ramaya, by his wife. Rataha, satisfied. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Satisfied by his wife, he enjoyed in that aerial mansion not only on Mount Meru, but in different gardens known as Vaishrambaka, Surasana, Nandana, Pushpabhadraka and Chaitya Ratya, and by the Manas Sarovara lake. There's no purport, so we'll go to text 41. Brajisnuna vimanena kamagena mahishyasha vaimanikan atyaseta charalokan yatanila. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. He traveled in that way through the various planets as air passes uncontrolled in every direction. Coursing through the air in that great and splendid aerial mansion which could fly at his will, he surpassed even the demigods. Purport. The planets occupied by the demigods are restricted to their own orbits, but Kardama Muni, by his yogic power, could travel all over the different directions of the universe without restriction. The living entities who are within the universe are called conditioned souls. That is, they are not free to move everywhere. We are inhabitants of this earthly globe. We cannot move freely to other planets. In the modern age, man is trying to go to other planets, but so far he has been unsuccessful. It is not possible to travel to any other planets because by the laws of nature, even the demigods cannot move from one planet to another. But Kardama Muni, by his yogic power, could surpass the strength of the demigods and travel in space in all directions. The comparison here is very suitable. The words yatan anila indicate that as air is free to move anywhere without restriction, so Kardama Muni unrestrictedly traveled in all directions of the universe. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadhantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vithamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mugam Kharoti Vachalam Bhangam Gayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Tirtharanam Paramanand Madhavam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we're continuing our discussion, or rather our discussion on how Kardama Muni had created a wonderful mansion and enjoyed with Devahuti. So as mentioned in so many classes before, that actually Kardama Muni, he was completely renounced. He was completely unattached to material nature. To the extent that even the Supreme Personality of Godhead had come to give him his darshan personally. And on top of that, we have Devahuti, who's equally qualified, who gave up all opulences and rendered humble menial service unto Kardama Muni. And the whole purpose behind all of this enjoyment was simply to create an environment in which they could produce wonderful children in accordance with the desire of their superiors, simply to propagate population within the universe. So this whole section is not simply a way Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to inspire material enjoyment within the heart. It's meant to help establish the situation, help us understand the context, help us understand that despite all of these situations of enjoyment, that Devahuti and Kardama Muni were able to remain sane. Right? They were able to remain fixed in their duties. Because later on, what's Devahuti's lamentation? Does anyone remember? Has anyone read ahead? Yeah, so Devahuti later on, after begetting children, after Kapila Dev is there, Devahuti, before Kapila Dev appears, Devahuti starts to lament that just before her husband leaves home, that she hasn't taken full association of her husband. Why? Because there wasn't enough enjoyment? No, because she understood the saintly nature of her husband. She understood how his association was so valuable in performing Krishna consciousness. So you can see that Devahuti's consciousness was completely devoid of this desire for material sense gratification, just for the sake of satisfying the senses. And the same thing for Kardama Muni. He did not just stay in family life till the very end. He left it because he had promised in the beginning. Do you remember? One of the last things he had told Swayambhuv Manu was that I'll beget a child in her and then I'll leave. Because that was all that was required of him. So, how this happens, how Devahuti is able to manage without children, without a husband, you can understand later on in this canto. But the main thing here is that Devahuti and Kardama Muni, although they had full enjoyment, they were able to remain aloof without being entangled in such enjoyment. Okay? So here in this verse, we're dealing specifically with how they went through the various planetary systems. It's mentioned that the soul is known as Sarvagata. Sarvagata. One morning walk, Prabhupada was walking, and they were walking on a footpath, and in the footpath, in between, some plants were growing. And so Prabhupada was pointing and he was saying, what does that show to his disciples? And his disciples were looking at him, no, we don't seem to understand. And Prabhupada was saying, just see that even within the crack in the cement, which the cement itself is unconscious, but even within the crack, life form is growing. Even within that small crack in the pavement, there seems to be life growing. Some small plant is coming through there. So Prabhupada is saying you can just see, if in such a small place life is coming, you can understand the extent or the reach of the soul's capability to be able to take a material body throughout the universe. And often Prabhupada will talk about this example in the sense of how in the different planetary systems of the universe, there are living entities, but they have bodies that are acclimatized or specifically meant for that particular atmosphere. And the example here Prabhupada gives again is that how we have the ocean and there are aquatics living in the ocean, and how we who have human bodies that are accustomed to the land, if we go into the ocean and stay in the ocean, how long we can survive? Yeah, we'll have all these mechanical contraptions and things like that, but how long? Not as long as the fish can, not as easily as the fish and the aquatics can. And if you go deeper and deeper, the pressure is so strong that you need a particular type of body. So in one sense, human beings, Prabhupada writes in the 10th canto, the four-headed scientists, they all try to produce, in one sense, another body, an external covering on top of this body to be able to explore such situations. So you can see Prabhupada's explaining there that if you need a body to be able to exist within the water, then what to speak of existing on the moon? What to speak of other planetary systems? What to speak of the sun? You need a body accustomed to that atmosphere to be able to live there. So, although the soul is sarvagata, that's one aspect. The soul can go anywhere and everywhere. Like how Mahaprabhu tells, Brahmanda Brahmite Konya Bhagavan Jeev. Brahmanda Brahmite, that the soul is going throughout whole of universe, rotating up and down. So why does Prabhupada say here that despite the soul being sarvagata, being able to pervade or go through any atmosphere, how is it that Prabhupada is saying that they're not free to move anywhere and everywhere? So to clarify that, you need to understand that yes, the soul is able to go all over the universe, beyond the universe, but due to the laws of material nature, the soul is bound, entangled by a certain combination of the modes of nature. And being entangled in that particular mode, they're stuck in that particular atmosphere until they leave the body to go to the next body. So this is, in other words, the law of karma. So the body that they have is fixed according to their desires of the previous life and the association of the modes they've had. Karnam guna sangasya sadasad yoni janmasu. So you can understand that by the association of the modes, one gets a body. And that body is accustomed to a particular environment. Why? Because in that environment, one will be able to enjoy the desires one had desired in their previous life. Take, for example, a human being that performs sinful activities, so much so that they are, They are destined to get a body of a dog. Why? Why suddenly from human being to dog? Why human being to animal? Why? Because of the desires that they have. The way they act in this life and the desires that they have in this life, in other words, association of the modes of nature, they'll be able to satisfy the desires in the next life accordingly. So Prabhupada explains that those who love to eat flesh and blood, they'll take birth in the carnivorous family of animals, like the lions and all of them, so that they can drink and suck blood. Right? Okay? Those who want to appear naked, barely wearing anything, in the next life they'll be given the opportunity to stand naked like a tree for the rest of their life. That facility to be able to enjoy that desire happens due to the combination of the modes of nature. And that appears in the form of the body. When you have a look at the progressive creation, secondary creation, you'll see the modes of nature are the ones that get agitated, pradhan, into Mahatattva. Then the Mahatattva, the false ego in touch with passion, false ego in touch with ignorance, false ego in touch with goodness, produce all the other organs like the mind, the senses, the sense objects, then the elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. So you can see how much the modes of nature are already permeating material existence. I'm certain mix, Prabhupada says you have 3 into 3 into 3 into 3, so it becomes like 3 into 3, it becomes 9, and then 9 into 9 into 81. And that much varieties you have of combinations. In that way, Prabhupada explains that you have 3 ropes, and when you get the ropes together and you tie them together, and then the ropes are tied to you, it's very difficult. You're bound. You can't escape. So in that way, the demigods, their particular combination of modes of nature are leaning towards goodness. So they'll have primarily goodness, but they'll be mixed with passion and ignorance to a certain degree. In the middle planetary system, it's passion that's predominant. And then if you're lower planetary system, it's ignorance. But the other modes of nature are always there. And according to this combination, one gets a body. According to one's desire, one's association with a particular mode of nature, one gets that particular body. Like, for example, it's mentioned that for one who associates, or if you want to become a drunkard, what do? You associate with other people who drink. If you want to be a prominent business person, you associate with other business people. Right? So in the same way, by associating with a particular mode of nature, you develop that particular desire, that particular body to fulfill that desire. So, if you have that, what is that called? That's called conditioning. It means you're stuck. You're stuck to a particular desire. Right? Like the example I remember when I came to Krishna consciousness is, why is it that if twins are born, they're both very different in personality? Right? They're both born from the same mother and father at nearly the same time. Right? But why is it that they both have different desires, different tastes? Although that they may be born at the same time. Because of the karma they accrued in their previous life. Although they may be born at the same time, their desires are different. The way they enjoy may be different. The way they desire to enjoy is different. One may like pizza, one may not like pizza. Right? One may like khichdi, one may not like khichdi, right? Although they're born from the same womb, the desire is different. Although they've given somewhat similar bodies, externally speaking, desire is different. So if you have a look in the sense of the different planetary systems, it's mentioned that demigods don't even like coming to this planetary system. They don't like coming here. It's just such a degraded place. If you read in Prithu Maharaj's section, it mentions they don't even touch the floor. That's how dirty they think this place is. They don't think it's suitable for their to inhabit this place. Why? Because they are not accustomed. Their bodies, their desires don't allow them to be able to enjoy here. Just like us, if we see an animal enjoying, like say for example a pig, we think, oh, how disgusting, right? But that same Indra who doesn't like living on this earthly planetary system, that same Indra was cursed to be a pig and he enjoyed very nicely. So the body facilitates the enjoyment, the desire to enjoy separate from Krishna. But then what happened to Indra? He got stuck there, right? Brahma said, okay, that's enough, now you come back. No, why should I come? I have such nice family, such nice stool, such nice pigsty, everything is so good. Why should I come back? Entanglement. And that entanglement is another name for that entanglement is conditioning. You're stuck. There are two potencies of material nature, of the material nature, Maya. There's avaranatmika and prakshapatmika. One part of the potency covers you, and the other part of the potency drags you down. And I like to remember this in the sense of, like, if you watch those nice mafia movies, you'll see that when they take the victim, that the mafia will cover their head and then they'll lead them somewhere. Right? They'll lead them somewhere to be interrogated. And then they will do their stuff and they'll leave them there and walk away. That person won't know how to escape. How they got there, they don't know. How to get out, they don't know how to get out. So in the same way that Maya, she doesn't just drag you down. First, she makes you forget who you are. She makes you forget your situation, your eternal position. Because if you understood yourself as the eternal part and parcel, the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no matter where Maya drags you in this material world, it doesn't matter. Because you'll be fixed in your constitutional position. Like Prabhupada says, if you get typewriter here in the earthly planets, what will it do? It'll help you type. If you take it to the heavenly planets, what will it do? It'll type. Same thing with the devotee. They'll always be fixed in their constitutional position as being servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So regardless of where their journey is, heaven or hell, it is the same for them because they're engaged in the Supreme Personality of Godhead service. But the way Maya works for conditioned souls is that she makes us forget who we are. And then what do? We accept ourselves as this body. And why would we want to get out if we accept ourselves as this body? Because we want to stay here if we are the body, right? Because this is where the body belongs, in the material nature. So we'll try to enjoy to the best of our ability. And when we get into a situation why we can't enjoy, we won't be able to enjoy fully. And that's due to the conditioning. We are fixed to enjoy, hardwired to enjoy in a particular way according to the body. And the point I'm trying to make here is that we are not free to move everywhere. Once you've got the body, that's it. You can't go back to shop and give refund. You desired it, you got it, that's it. Finished. Now you have to live with it. The next body you may have a chance of doing something according to the law of karma. So then, this is the nature of the living entities or the conditioned souls within the material universe. That Although Kardama Muni, by his yogic power, could travel all over directions, all different directions of the universe without restriction, conditioned souls who are within the universe are not free to move everywhere. So Prabhupada will often use this as an opportunity to explain how it is not possible for human beings to enter into the heavenly planetary system, specifically the moon. Right? That we see in the example of Trishanku. You know Trishanku? How he went to Vishwamitra Muni and said, Vishishta couldn't take me to heavenly planets, you take me there. And Vishwamitra, despite all of his mystic potencies, tried to put Trishanku there. What happened? By the yagya, he put Swaha, Trishanku flew up, and then Indra heard some Shudra is coming, he threw thunderbolt, he fell down. Then Trishanku went up, he fell down. He went up, he went. So, to the extent that Vishwamitra created a whole planetary system just for Trishanku. Because although he's not qualified, rather, because he is not qualified, he's not allowed to enter into the heavenly planetary systems. Another example is Ravana. What was Ravana trying to do? Ravana was trying to bypass the laws of material nature to create a golden staircase up into Swarga. So this is the demoniac tendency, and this is always crushed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and through material nature. So therefore you'll always be unsuccessful in trying to enter into other planetary systems. It is not possible to travel to any other planets because by the laws of nature, even the demigods cannot move from one planet to another. This is quite interesting because we see Indra goes from one planet to another, Varuna goes from one planet. Like when Prithu Maharaj was being coronated, who came? Shiva came, Varuna came, Chandra, the demigod in charge of the moon, came. Right? Indra came, Surya came, they all came. So what does it mean by it's not possible to travel to other planets by the laws of nature? Even the demigods cannot move from one planet to another. There are certain restrictions. These particular principal demigods are given that particular potency to appear in yagyas, to appear in different places, to be able to offer benedictions. But demigods in general, not possible to travel from one place to another. It's these principal demigods, these particular personalities that have this yogic power. In other words, the qualification. And yogic power doesn't come just simply by, what we have as material qualification. You go to university, get a certificate, now you're qualified. No, yogic power comes by becoming more and more attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, becoming more and more pure in consciousness. Right? Because you saw the austerities that Kardama Muni performed up until this point, yes? Completely beyond the material body. He was fixed in the constitutional position of the soul. In the 11th canto, it's mentioned, Krishna tells Uddhava the different types of mystic siddhis. And there he's saying that to get all these mystic siddhis, one has to perform severe penances, Ashtanga Yoga. One has to become first established on the Brahman platform to be able to get some sort of mystic potency. And there he's specifically mentioning that to the degree that they worship him, to that degree they'll get that mystic potency. So how to become heavier than the heaviest? They meditate on Krishna as the super soul and how he's present everywhere in the material universe, and how by being present within the elements, the Pancha Mahabhuta, that they'll get such potencies. So like that, one's mystic potencies are in relation to worship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to the degree of one's self-realization. So the demigods are on that platform. These principal demigods, they're allowed entrance into Shvetadvip. Where Brahma goes and meditates, whenever there's difficulty, they'll stand there and chant Purusha Shukta prayers, worshipping Vishnu, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. So their position is a bit different to so-called ordinary demigods, or the citizens of the demigods' planets. They're stuck to their planets. It's mentioned Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, some of them are able to travel because they have wings and things to travel, but they're stuck within the heavenly sphere. So there's always some sort of condition. Kardama Muni was able to break through all of these conditionings and go throughout the whole universe, up and down, without being restricted. That's the point being mentioned here. You see, there was a point in time, if you read 8th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, there was a point in time where the demons who existed in the subterranean heavenly planets, they were able to throw off the demigods and take over Swarga. But for how long? Right? It wasn't permanent. It was something extremely temporary. So this is the thing that's being mentioned. Prabhupada even goes to the point of saying that even if you attain the moon in this self-same body, how long you can be there? You won't be able to perform the functions you're able to perform here. You'll be restricted. You'll be restricted. So here, Kardama Muni by his yogic powers could surpass the strength of the demigods and travel in space in all directions. That's why when you have a look in the scheme of things, in the hierarchy, you have excuse me, the lower planetary systems, the hellish planetary system, subterranean heavenly planetary system. Then after that you have Brahmanda, the middle planetary systems. Then after that you have the planetary systems where the ghosts reside. Then after that you have the Swarga where the demigods reside. And after Swarga, who stays there? The Rishis and the Munis. Tapalok. Those people in that particular realm, just before Brahmaloka, they are the Rishis. And they are of a higher caliber, more pure than all the living entities below them. So you can see that Kardama Muni, by his yogic austerities, was able to get such mystic potency that surpassed even that of the demigods. So here, the point being mentioned is that just see, what did Kardama Muni focus on in the beginning? Was Kardama Muni's focus on getting mystic potency? Was that Kardama Muni's focus? What was his focus? What was his purpose of tapasya? To please Vishnu, yeah, but there's one more thing there. Yes, Prabhu. He was ordered by Brahma. It wasn't that he performed the tapasya simply to get yogic powers. Yogic powers was a byproduct of his practice of devotional service. This is the main point we need to understand. Just see how powerful devotees are. But devotees are so powerful, devotees are so strong, so endowed with potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but you won't be able to recognize them. Such pure devotees, they are so powerful, but they just appear like one of us. In other words, just appear like conditioned soul. Iha yasya harer dasya karmana manasa gira nikilastasu avastasu jivan muktasa uchyate. Prabhupada gives the example of a coconut with the flesh of the coconut removed from the coconut. So when you shake, it rattles. That's called Jivan Mukta. They appear to be ordinary living entities within the material world, but they're completely unentangled, detached, unaffected, aloof from material nature. It doesn't affect them. It's the same way the pure devotees that come to this material world, that are liberated souls, they appear like that. And although they appear like that, they are not ordinary living entities. They're extremely powerful. How are they extremely powerful? Not just because of this, they have access to mystic potency. They're able to liberate the living entity from so-called conditionings within the material world. Right? You will not find any other living entity who's able to break through the knot of material existence other than devotees. Not even the yogis, not even the Brahmavadis, none of them will be able to do the greatest act of mystic power that the devotee can perform, by cutting the hard knot of material existence and liberating the living entity, the conditioned soul, from material existence. It's mentioned, my spiritual master mentions that devotees are like portals. They're like, what's the word? They're like checkpoints or portals or opportunities for the living entities to escape material existence. The Supreme Personality Godhead, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, they arrange their pure devotees throughout the universe so that when anyone comes in contact with them, they're able to escape the material existence. It's mentioned, you have so many jails in this planet, and you hear so many things about jail breaks, criminals escaping jail. But this material world is a jail. But the funny thing is that there's no bars. There's no bars. And still no one is escaped by brute force. Because they're shackled by material attachment, by karma. They're shackled to material existence. And they're shackled so well, I told you before, right? They're covered and then they're dragged down by Maya. They're covered so well that although there's no bars in the material world, you can easily escape, still they can't. But the devotees of the Supreme Personality Godhead, they are able to do so. They're able to help you escape material existence. Another example given is that it's mentioned that you see the Supreme Personality Godhead's feet, they're like a boat in which one can use to cross over material existence. And the sages use that boat to escape material existence. But you know how merciful they are? When you take a boat from one side of the ocean, one side of the river to the other side of the river, from one shore to the other, what happens to the boat? It gets stuck on the other side, right? Say if I go from point A to point B, the boat will be stuck on point B when I get off. Which means someone who's waiting in the previous port, point A, won't have a ride. But the saintly persons are so powerful, they're so magnanimous, that although they use that boat to cross, that boat still remains on the other side, available for all conditioned souls to cross over. That defies all logic, so to speak. Okay? Another example given of the potency of the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the devotees. Okay, first the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's mentioned that one who takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ocean of material existence becomes reduced to the size of water that's contained within the hoof print of a calf. You know how big is the hoof print of a calf? Maybe that big? That much water. The whole ocean of material existence gets reduced to that part. And one is able to easily step over it and get to the other side. But here's the funny thing. One who's so attached to material existence, Maya is so sneaky to the extent that one becomes Brahman realized. One is able to understand he's not the body of the soul, right? And he's able to get mystic potencies. Such a person is still inflicted by the subtle disease, the enemies of lust, greed, anger, envy, madness, illusion. And Bhagavatam explains, Krishna explains in the Uddhava Gita, that such persons, they cross over the ocean of material existence, but due to anger, they trip and fall and drown in the puddle. Because of anger, they drown in the puddle. They're not able to cross over it. It's a very embarrassing situation, right? That if you walk on the street, there's that very famous comedy, you walk on the street and then there's some obstacle there and you jump over the obstacle and you think, yeah, I conquered it. And then you slip on very simple banana and you fall down and break your leg, right? It's a comedy piece. You become an object of people's laughter. In the same way, for a yogic sage, we may seem, wow, so powerful, so much enjoyment, can produce gold, can produce this, but they're not free from anger. And if they display their anger even a moment, everything becomes finished. Everything they worked up until that point becomes finished. All of that tapasya, penance, austerities, mystic potencies, everything becomes vanquished simply by displaying anger and pride. Which is what we see in the example of Vishwamitra. First he showed calm. He's a Kshatriya by nature. Out of passion, he saw how Vishishta was so powerful having a Kamadhenu. So what did he do? I'll also perform tapasya. I'll also become a Brahmana. I'll also become Brahma Rishi. So he fought his way in that way. He went and performed tapasya for tens and thousands of years, lost it all to Menaka. Again thought, no, I won't fall down. Another tens and thousands of years, again fell down to Ramba, anger. Again, another tens and thousands of years, then it fell down to pride because of trying to best Vishishta by sending Trishanku up to the heavenly planetary system. So you can see by simple example that, of course, Vishwamitra later on became such a pure devotee of the Lord that the Lord himself appeared as Lord Ramachandra and took guidance from him, right? So, not to put Vishwamitra down, but to explain the nature of the yogis, that despite coming to that point of having such mystic potency, all of these demons, these dirty things within the heart still remain. But for a devotee, it doesn't. It doesn't exist at all. They're completely absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And to be absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead means to be of the same platform of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Sabditam. That this sattva, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pure goodness, uncontaminated. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Sabditam. Oh, Vasudeva Sabditam. It's the platform of Vasudev, on which Vasudev is. So, this pure mode of goodness is only possible when one comes in, or to attain this pure mode of goodness is possible when one associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Alright? And that is the way of exiting this material world. And being in contact with the pure devotee of the Lord, one is able to develop that mode of goodness, that pure mode of goodness. One is able to train, one is able to accept training on how to serve the Lord. And the most prominent example is in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. How Narad Muni was in his previous life explaining to Vyasadeva that I was just simply a maidservant's son. I wasn't such a big rishi, I wasn't the Vyasa of this age, I wasn't any of these things. I wasn't the great sage Narad Muni, I wasn't any of these things. I was just simply a maidservant's son. What did I know? Just simply a young boy. But because I served those Bhagavatas that were traveling, just simply because I took care of them, whatever they took, the remnants, by their permission I ate them. And he became purified. He became purified to the extent that despite being such a young boy, he was able to go around the world completely samadarshan, like as a samadarshi, completely equal vision, seeing the Supreme Lord everywhere. To the extent he heard the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. He meditated and saw the Lord, and suddenly the Lord vanished. And then he was so shocked. And then he said, my dear, the Supreme Personality of Godhead told him directly, my dear boy, I'm afraid to tell you that in this life you'll no longer be able to see me. But if you continue in this way, you'll be able to achieve me at the end of this life. How was it possible for such a maidservant son? Because of association with the pure devotees, the Mahabhagavatas. And he did not have to go through Karma Yoga, he did not have to go through Jnana Yoga, he did not have to go through Ashtanga Yoga. He simply had to just take shelter of the devotees and follow their instructions. And that was enough for him to become liberated, become the great sage Narada Muni. Of course, this is just simply Narada Muni's explanation of his lifetime to show by example. But here you can understand that it is like a rope when someone is stuck in a well. Rather than trying to climb out of the well by one's own endeavor, one is able to take hold of the rope, will immediately come up, right? By the strength of one who's pulling up in the top. So in the same way, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions how in material world, we're all stuck in the well, so to speak. And it's up to us to go hold on to the rope that comes down, which is the instructions of our spiritual master. It's up to us to hold on to it. The rope will come, but it's our duty to hold on to it. In other words, it's our duty to become self-controlled to the extent that we follow those instructions without neglecting them. And that's how one is able to escape material existence. But one who's able to escape material existence their power by far surpasses just the so-called powers being displayed by Kardama Muni. So don't get bewildered. Kardama Muni is more potent than this. He is so potent that he's able to invoke the Supreme Personality of Godhead to appear in this world as his son. This is nothing in comparison to that. Because only the Supreme Personality of Godhead will have such potency in full. Kardama Muni is only able to go throughout this universe at his own will. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is able to pervade all of existence. Kardama Muni can only appear at one place at one particular point in time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is able to appear in all places, at all times. This is the extent of mystic potency. And one who's in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead has such potency. And I'll end with this one point. How do you have this potency? How the devotees have such potency? You see the case of someone like Narad Muni. Brihad Bhagavatamrita explains that when Gopakumar was going from one planetary system to the other, he had seen Narad Muni on a lower planetary system. And then when he went up to Vaikuntha, then he saw Narad Muni there again. And he went to Dwarka, he saw Narad Muni there again. And he was so confused. It's like you're everywhere. And Narad Muni was explained to him that the devotees of the Lord are empowered by the Lord with the potency to be able to do that. So in every universe in this material world, like Prabhupada explains, Krishna Leela is like the rising and setting of the sun. It's not that it starts and stops. It's always happening. If in this universe is Krishna's being born, in another universe he's killing Putana. In another universe he's killing Bakasura. In another universe he's in Dwarka. In another universe he's killing Kamsa. So it's always happening at every single point in time. And if he's in Dwarka in one place and Dwarka in another place, that means Vasudev, Devaki, all his queens, all his associates, they should also be present in both universes at the same time, associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna is able to give. And if he's speaking to Arjuna Bhagavad Gita in one universe, and in another universe he's enjoying with Arjuna on the lake, on the banks of Yamuna, or he's resting with Arjuna and the other Pandava brothers in their palace. So Arjuna exists in all universes as well. How is it possible? Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is able to empower them to do so. So Narad Muni has the same potency, the Bhakti Shakti, to be able to appear in many places at once. So this is the real potency of the devotee. We shouldn't become so enamored by so-called mystic potency. Yeah, Kardama Muni is this mystic potency. Yeah, if I worship Radha Gopinath, then I can get so much money. I can get so much wealth. I can get a good house. I can get this. These are all material considerations. They're all secondary. We worship Shri Radha Gopinath simply to give them pleasure. That's it. And why do we do that? Not out of mere sentiment. We understand that we are part and parcel of Radha Gopinath. That by watering the root of the tree will be nourished and satisfied. By feeding the stomach, food has to go to the stomach for the whole body to be nourished. In the same way, by serving Krishna, Achyuta, by serving Him, Sarvahanam Achyutejya, by serving Him, everything will be satisfied, everything will be pleased, everything will be okay. So Kardama Muni had this in mind. Although all of these things are happening, Kardama Muni gave it all up and he went to the forest to meditate again. Why? Because he knows all of these things are temporary. All of these things are simply a distraction. Desiring a good body, desiring a good family to take birth in, desiring beauty, desiring wealth, all of these things are temporary. They'll come and go. So Kardama Muni knew what's really important in life. Swartagatim. So don't get caught up in these descriptions of so-called mystic potencies that is being displayed here. Kardama Muni was never entangled. Devahuti was never entangled by this. She didn't lament because, oh no, my husband's gone, now the house is gone. She lamented that the association was gone. She lamented that there wasn't a further opportunity to advance in spiritual life. Right? Okay, so there's this last sentence I'll finish with. The words yata anila indicate that as the air is free to move anywhere without restriction, so Kadamuni unrestrictedly traveled in all directions of the universe. This is the prerogative of the devotee. They can go anywhere and anywhere, everywhere in the universe, simply for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality Godhead, simply for His service. So there's a lot to speak on that, because the glories of the devotees are very powerful. Like if you read in 10th canto, Krishna will tell the sages that, you go to Ganga and you take bath, but only after repeated bathing will your sinful reactions disappear. But just by seeing you, all my sinful reactions are gone. Just simply by hearing from you, saintly persons, what takes so long to achieve by taking bath in Ganga, immediately by seeing you, pure devotees, one becomes immediately pure. Krishna puts himself in a very humble position and says, sinful people like us immediately become purified by seeing saintly persons like you. So this is the nature of a devotee. There's nothing else we need to aspire for other than Shri Shri Radha Gopinath's service. There's really nothing else that we require. Everything is taken care of. Your food, Prabhupada says, elephant gets its kilo of food, and ant gets its grain of sugar. Satisfied. My future, Gopinath will take care of that. My service, that's all we need to worry about. Maintenance, everything Gopinath is taken care of. You just need to prioritize how to keep this body and soul together, the bare minimum, and the rest of my time engaged in Krishna's service, simply for Radha Gopinath's pleasure, that's all. If we develop that, gradually we'll understand how important it is to take association of devotees, how important it is to serve the Supreme Personality Godhead, and how privileged we are, and how grateful we should be. Then we won't be bewildered by all these temporary things we see, that this person has a nice car, that person has a nice house, this, that, the other. All we'll be hankering for is, just see these wonderful devotees, how wonderful qualities they have. If only I could have such humility this devotee has. If only I can have this enthusiasm this devotee has. And gradually we'll advance in devotional service. These are the real mystic potencies. To be humble, to be tolerant. These are the real mystic yogic siddhis that we want. Not this cheap stuff, becoming lighter than Elias. What you'll do with that? You'll simply become more agitated and frustrated with life. That's all. Unsatisfied. But with humility, tolerance, patience, enthusiasm, all centered around serving Radha Gopinath, they're the real mystic siddhis. They're the real things that we want. That's what will give us real satisfaction. That's what we want, satisfaction. And that will only happen if we perform our devotional service to Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. Okay? I'll end here. Is there any questions, comments, anything someone likes to share, ask? Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande.